Assalamualaikum everyone. Today we have a very distinct guest with us, Mr. Krik Hazlette. Mr. Krik Hazlette brings with him a wealth of experience in federal government and non-profit PR, as well extensive teaching experience. He has been a prominent government and non-profit PR, as well as extensive teaching experience. He has been a prominent figure in the field for many years. We are truly honored to have you here today, Mr. Hazlette, to share your remarkable journey and insight with us. In this interview, we aim to delve into Mr. Hazlette's career experience and expertise, so we can all benefit from his valuable knowledge. So, without further ado, let's get started and learn more about Mr. Krik Hazlette life journey and professional insights. So, welcome, sir. How are you?
Thank you. It's very nice to be here and nice to see virtually everyone. I hope we have a good session today.
Thank you. Sir, please introduce yourself for my viewers.
Absolutely. And very simply, I'm a semi-retired, and I put that in quotation marks, public relations professional / professor. I worked for public relations in the public relations field for about 30 years, and then transitioned into education, higher education. At the time, I was in the Boston, Massachusetts area, and I was teaching part-time at several colleges and universities in the Boston area, graduate courses and undergraduate. I'm now living in Florida and thought I had retired, but I got a call from the University of Tampa asking if I would be interested in teaching part-time for them. And I said, of course. So still not retired, still enjoying teaching what I learned over the course of, now 50 plus years. And hopefully my students and others benefit from it.
All right, wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for your introduction. So, now let's move on to questions. My first question is on your screen. Can you describe your extensive experience in federal government and non-profit PR and how it has shaped your approach to public relations?
Well, that's a very, very good question. And I think I say obviously, but if you've never worked for the federal government, you wouldn't know. But working with the federal government, I learned the true meaning of bureaucracy and how you communicate in large organizations. But what I learned more than anything else, and what has fed me as a public relations professional, is the importance of helping, not making, helping our publics understand what we are doing and why they are important for us. So that has been, for my approach, has been just that, is making sure that the organization I represent, that we're presenting a clear, complete picture of what we're doing, and that we're listening to our audiences to make sure we're answering their questions. So it's been a give and take, learn a lot all throughout the years, and I'm still learning every day.
All right, wonderful answer. Thank you so much for your answer. So, my next question is how do you ensure quality service and customer satisfaction in PR work for healthcare and member service organization?
Well, this healthcare and member services, yes, but for the entire world, if you will, how do you ensure quality service? You ask. You ask your customers, you ask your publics, am I meeting your expectations? And if the answer is yes, then you say, very good, let's hope we keep this up. If you get feedback that says, it wasn't really that, then I want to know. Tell me what I can do to make it better. And what that means is, and I forget yesterday talking to someone, um, my management approach is, I call it management by walking around. I don't sit at my desk and just do stuff. I get out and I talk to people to make sure that, again, that I've met their expectations. And if I have not, then I ask, what would you like for me to do differently? And if it's possible, I will do it. If it's not possible, I will explain why it's not possible, but tell them that will do the best I can do to meet their expectations. But it's very, very much, it's a two-way proposition here. I talk to them, they talk to me, we come to an agreement.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your answer. So my next question is, what were the key challenges you faced when managing communications program for the U.S. Army and U.S. Air Force in Vietnam, Philippines, and the U.S.?
That's a good question. And I try not to offend anyone when I say this. The military in particular, and in the Air Force, I was active duty military, so I was a sergeant in the Air Force. In the Army, I was a civilian, but I was not one of the senior people. I was sort of mid-level. The difficulties a lot of times was, well, I am the commander. I know what's going on. Don't tell me, you know. And then I love to tell this story one time is when in the Air Force is I was working for one very, very senior level organization. And I was enlisted, as I say, a sergeant, that my two co-workers were officers, a major and a lieutenant colonel. And we were standing and they were talking with one of their colleagues, another senior officer. And this fellow was talking to them, and then he turned to me and he looked, and I remember this from 100 years ago. You won't understand this, Hazlette, because he was looking at the stripes on my sleeve, not the brass on my collar. And one of my colleagues, the colonel, started laughing, and he said, Sergeant Hazlette has 3 degrees. He is helping us with our work as we study for the Air War College. And that this fellow, all he saw was, well, you're enlisted, so you don't know, you don't understand. And that I've carried that throughout my entire professional career. Do not assume that someone doesn't understand what you are trying to do or trying to say. One last quick story. I'm sorry, I do this all the time here. When I was teaching in Vietnam, I like to always be clear. My English degree was 18th century British literature. I did not study grammar, but I was teaching English as a second language. And sometimes I would write something on the blackboard, and the student would obviously ask, well, Mr. Hazlette, what is that? Verb form or something. And sometimes I would know, sometimes I would not know. But I figured, well, they don't understand it. They're learning English, so does it matter what I say? So I would make up stuff, just pull stuff. One day I did this. I wrote on the board. The question came. I had no idea. I made up my answer. And a very, very quiet voice in the back of the classroom, I remember his name to this day, 1969. I remember his name, Mr. Fu. Excuse me, Mr. Hazlette, you're wrong. Excuse me. Well, Mr. Fu, what is it? He began to explain, and I knew about 2 sentences in. He knew what he was talking about. Mr. Fu, how did you know that? Well, before I was drafted into the military, I was a professor of French at the University of Saigon. I have a PhD in French, and I also studied English. Okay, from now on, you answer the questions I do. But the point is, that was a challenge. I allowed myself to assume that he didn't know, and that was always. And also, the government does not like change. I think we see that anywhere in the world. Government does not like change, and I'm all about if it doesn't work, do something different. So over the years, working both in the military and as a civilian, was I learned how to make sure that I had a clear explanation for why something was necessary, so that there wouldn't be this, why are you doing this? So lessons learned, do your homework first, and then make your changes, do your activities, but make sure you know what you're talking about.
All right, very inspiring answer. Thank you so much for your answer. So, in your opinion, how the field of public relations evolved over the years, and how have you adapted to these changes in your career?
Wow. Well, of course, you're talking to someone who's been around for a very, very long time. When I started in public relations in the very, very early years, and I have to be clear about this, we were just getting, for example, color television. When I was a child, black and white television was all we had. The media at that time was newspaper, magazine, radio, and sort of, it was evolving television. For public relations professionals, and we were in the early years very locally oriented, if you will. We didn't worry in the United States so much about what was happening in Europe or Asia or wherever it might be. We were more focused on right here, right now. That has changed. We know this. I mean, hello, you're in Pakistan, I'm in Florida in the United States. We're having this conversation immediately. And what that has done for public relations is it means I have to be aware immediately of what's happening anywhere, and being knowing whether or not whatever that is, how is it affecting me, my organization? Because it will have, it's not to go too far down here, but this is a perfect day to talk about. This is 9/11. This is a very significant day for the United States and the world. And I remember so vividly that day is my wife is Asian. She was at work when the first explosion occurred in New York. Within about 10 minutes, she got a phone call from a friend in Australia asking, is a mutual friend, someone they knew from their childhood who worked in New York, is she okay? The world is connected so much more deeply today. So again, a lot of things have changed. You have to adapt. And you'll hear me say this probably 2,000 times. I tell my students, I tell my colleagues, never stop learning. Be aware of what's going on and be as ready as you possibly can to address the issues. So there we are. The world it used to be huge. Now it's small.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you so much for your answer. So, as a member of PRSA and with your various leadership positions, can you share the most significant contribution you have made to the field of public relations through your involvement in the organization?
Well, without patting myself on the back and saying, good boy, Kirk, um, I think the one thing I have done more that I'm most proud of is opening up what we are doing as a professional organization, whether it be the national, for us, the Public Relations Society of America, or our local chapters. For example, I belong to the Tampa Bay, Florida chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. In Boston, it was the Boston chapter. In Hawaii, it was the Hawaii chapter. Letting the public know who we are, what we are doing, and how we can help them. And I think that is more than anything else. I have made it a point of not just saying, oh, look at us, we're such good people, but hello, public, what can I do to help you? And we start seeing more of a cooperative relationships. So I think that's probably the best. The thing I'm most proud of is just that.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for your answer. So, what strategies have you most effective in community relations, planning for non-profit organization and associations?
Very, very simple. First thing is, I say over and over and over, is be out in the public, be aware of what your audiences, your publics, your consumers, your whatever it might be, how can you best help them? And this, you tell me, and I will do my very, very best to make sure that my meets your expectations. For example, one association that I worked with in Boston, we had a transportation division. We had buses that carried employees from different parts of Boston into our work area. On the senior uh, management team, I was the only person who actually used public transportation. And so I rode our buses to see A, where they went, B, how they met the needs of the people who were riding them. Did they go to the locations they needed? So you need to be aware. And this means, once again, you cannot sit behind your desk and just move papers around. You have to be out in the public, asking questions, and then following up. Did I make, for the Blood Bank of Hawaii, just to use them as a quick example here, I implemented a feedback system. Literally, this is 1990, so I could do this. A piece of paper. How was your experience today? And as anyone who came to one of our blood centers to donate, when they were finished, while they were relaxing, we would ask them to give us the feedback. I would get it the next day. I would respond within 24 hours with an answer, what we are doing to address whatever issue, if there was one, that they mentioned. But you have to have that one-on-one immediate connection. So that's what I do the most of. That's what has been most successful in every position that I've ever used.
All right, thank you so much for your answer. So, my next question is, can you provide examples of your successful PR initiative for non-profit organizations such as the Blood Bank and Hawaii and the Medical Area Service Corporation?
But, I can talk the Blood Bank of Hawaii, the nice thing about them, and I always have to say this immediately, is when I took over their communication program, it was already very good. But I brought to them a perspective as someone outside of the field. I had no idea what blood banking really was. I learned. And one of the things that I did was to really increase our interaction with our publics. And for example, and I used to ask in our senior staff meetings, I have name tag, Krik Hazlette, Director of Communications. When I went out into the community during the week while I was working, I always had my name tag on so people could see. And they learned over time. All they had to do was say, stop, excuse me, may I ask you, they could ask me questions. If I didn't have an answer, I would get them an answer immediately. But that, more than anything, with the Medical Area Service Corporation was the same thing. We were a member services organization. We had, I think it was 7 hospitals and 3 or 4 colleges in our area that were members. I met with their communication people regularly to ask, how can we support you better? And if they, sometimes they say, well, we don't have a problem now. Sometimes they would say, well, here's something. I would immediately go back, meet with the people responsible for that particular area, and we'd fix it. But it's very much a one-on-one interactive communication and response. So that's I think the one thing that's helped me to succeed through all of this is just being there, asking the questions, fixing the problem, and making sure that they knew what was happening. And part of this was very, very much a media relations, working with the news media, television, radio, newspapers, to make sure that they know what we're doing, because they reach an even larger audience. So that's my story there.
All right, great answer. Thank you so much for your answer. How has your experience in consulting services for organizations like the Manila and Singapore Red Cross influence your approach to PR and crisis management?
But it's interesting with the Manila, I can't even say it. The Manila, the Red Cross chapter, American Red Cross chapter in Manila, came to me for just assistance in education, primarily, interestingly enough, for the children of their employees, their volunteers in the Manila area. And one of the things, particularly for children of their parents were from the United States, Manila, we don't get too much snow there. So, and as the director of the chapter explained to me, some of these children are born in Manila. They grow up, they've never seen snow, they have no idea what it's all about. And some of them are of the age to be driving a car, and they have no idea how to drive in snowy, frozen water weather. I just happened to have some films. This is back in the day when you had actual films that you watched about safe driving. So we developed a safe driving program where we showed these children, if you will, these films, and explained to them what they needed to be aware of as they themselves, their parents ultimately were going to go back to the United States, to be aware that it's not going to be like it is here in Manila. Maybe in some parts of the country, but if you go to the north, where I was from Massachusetts, snow is a normal thing there. So that was it. There was really some education and awareness. With the Singapore Red Cross, they just wanted to know how they could better communicate with their audiences. And again, what I did was explain to them my media relations program for the Blood Bank of Hawaii and how we used the media to just to inform our publics of what was happening, and b, to respond to a crisis, if you will, if something happened, instead of waiting for the media to tell its story, is I will tell the media our story. And by doing that, I'm able to ensure that, if you will, the truth is told. You're seeing both sides of the picture here. So very, very much just helping them to, in both cases, to better communicate with their audiences and to get their messages clear, concise. Don't do like Kirk does and talk and talk and talk and talk. Tell your message and move on. So that's basically what I did there, was just assistance to better communicate.
All right, that's great. Experiences with our audience. We also want to extend our gratitude to our viewers and listeners for tuning in and being part of this insightful conversation. Remember, the learning does not stop here. We encourage you to explore further, delve into Mr. Hazlette's work, and continue to conversation about public relations and community relations. This has been a truly enlightening conversation, and we hope you found it as valuable as we did. Stay tuned for more engaging interviews and discussions. So, with that, goodbye. Have a wonderful day ahead.